Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm Jim Huffman with the Integrated Benefits Institute, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. I'm joined by my teammate, Sera-Leigh, who led this research project and will share key findings. We're very excited to be joined today by Aaron, who is responsible for global well-being at Coca-Cola. Welcome, Aaron. Would you tell us a bit more about your role at Coke and your career in employee benefits?
Sure, Jim. Hi. Thanks for having me today. Thanks. Hi, everybody. As you see, I am the leader of global wellbeing at the Coca-Cola Company, and happy to be part of this webinar today. My role sits within our global benefits function within the total rewards function at the Coca-Cola Company. So I report up through our people, what we call our people and culture function, and responsible for setting wellbeing strategies, establishing projects, and I have a 5-year roadmap I've been working around to cover off on all sorts of different aspects of well-being and promoting the well-being of our employees at the Coca-Cola Company.
Fantastic. Thank you. We have 1 hour scheduled for today's session. We'll record and we'll share the link as well as Sarah's slides to all who registered. Please take advantage of the chat feature and submit your questions. We've blocked time at the end for Q&A, but please don't hesitate to drop a question or a comment at any time. Our topic today is navigating workplace well-being programs. Many employers have implemented well-being programs over the past few years, and questions are now being asked, is it working? Are these programs reaching the intended audience? Are they engaging and leading to the impact we expected? Sarah's research surveyed both employer sponsors and employees and identified some critical gaps in the different perceptions. I'm confident you're going to find today's discussion to be very informative. So let's get started. Sera-Leigh, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Sera-Leigh Ghouralal. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to jump right in as we don't have a lot of time, and I know we want to get Q&A going at the end. So our agenda today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the background of the study, our methodology, and the bulk of it will focus on the findings. Then we'll have our discussion and Q&A. So our research is grounded in the observation that despite the known benefits of health and wellness programs, engagement levels among employees are not meeting expectations. Key barriers to participation include time limitations, perceived value issues, and a significant lack of communication, highlighting a gap between the availability of wellness programs and employee awareness or interest. Previous research has also showed that positive cultural factors such as supportive leadership and wellness-focused organizational culture are crucial in encouraging employee participation. However, a disconnect often exists between the offerings of wellness programs and the actual health and wellness priorities of employees, leading to perceptions of these programs as being ineffective or irrelevant. For our study, we aimed to navigate this complex landscape by examining both employee and employer perspectives on health and wellness programs. Our goal was to bridge the gap in understanding and identifying evidence-based strategies that enhance participation and ultimately improve employee well-being. We posed critical research questions to guide our research, focusing on why employees are not engaging with wellness offerings, the difference in alignment between employer and employee perspectives, and how organizational culture, leadership support, and communication strategies can impact engagement. Now I'm going to go on to the findings. First, I'll describe both samples, our employee sample and our employer sample. The employee sample consisted of 507 individuals from diverse age groups, regions, and backgrounds. As you can see here from our statistics, the southern region of the United States was the most represented in our sample, and the age range was evenly distributed with a lean toward 40 to 50-year-old respondents. There was an almost even split of having no children and having children under 18 years of age at home. A third of the respondents reported being primary caregivers to someone other than a child, and the majority reported not having a disability, but among those who did, mental health conditions were the most common disability. Employment status varied, but the majority worked full-time, and most have employer-sponsored health insurance. And there was an even split between office and hybrid work. But as you can see, most of them worked from home in our sample. Salary distribution falls mainly between the 30 to 75,000 range, and various sectors were represented, such as retail, hospitality services, healthcare, and information technology being the most prominent. Now, this is our employer sample. The employer sample included 455 respondents from diverse US industries and regions, all with decision-making roles in their organization's employee health and benefits. Some of the industries represented are information technology, healthcare, business consulting, retail, and finance and banking. And region was about evenly split, with the South slightly ahead. In terms of company size, the majority were small to medium businesses, with mid-sized and larger organizations also well represented. Full-time employees predominated, highlighting a traditional employment model focused on full-time roles. So now I'm going to go over the findings that we got. And throughout this, we will be comparing the employer and employee findings. I will highlight which is which as we go through. So 87% of employers report offering health and wellness programs, and 65% believe that their organizations are responsible for supporting the health of their employees. 49%, almost 50% of employees said that they were aware and familiar with what their organization offered in terms of health and wellness. 32% said that their employers did not offer any, and 17% said that their employer offered, but they were not familiar with it. So here we compare the employee and employer reported health and wellness offerings, with the employee reported being in blue and the employer reported being in orange. The main offerings were mental health services, financial well-being, and physical activity, such as fitness and on-site gym type benefits. Let's talk about participation trends. So overall, the data suggests that employers tend to report higher participation rates in health and wellness programs compared to employee-reported rates, which may indicate a communication gap or a difference in perception between what employers offer and what employees actually utilize. Again, in this bar chart, the employee is represented with the blue bars and the employers are represented with the orange bars. Among employees who answered that they were aware of the offerings that their employers had, participation varied, with mental health support being the most utilized at 41%. Key influences of participation included age, tenure at the company, and household income. For employers, which is the orange bars, mental health had the highest employer-reported engagement with 51% participation. Physical activity programs show a discrepancy, with employers reporting 43% participation, while employees report 32%. Notably, financial wellness programs, the employers report at 41% and employee report at 30%. The largest gaps we've seen between employer and employee reported was in the weight loss programs and nutrition programs. Maternity programs have the least discrepancy, but low participation overall, which could be due to a smaller target audience for those programs. A considerable 22% of employees state that they do not participate in any health and wellness programs, against only 5% reported by employers. Of those employees whose organizations offer health and wellness, 33% use them occasionally, 32% engage with them frequently, and 35% rarely or never use these programs. This seems like a balanced approach in participation levels, but that's a large number who rarely or never use the program, prompting us to explore factors that might influence usage. So through regression analysis, we found that three main factors emerged as significant influences in how much employees engage in these programs. Those were age, tenure at the company, and household income. Our analysis showed that a decrease in participation with increasing age, suggesting current programs may not fully resonate with older employees' needs or preferences. Conversely, a longer tenure at the company and higher household income were associated with greater program engagement, pointing to the importance of socioeconomic status and organizational loyalty in influencing health and wellness participation. A significant number of employees expressed a desire to improve physical health, enhance mental well-being as their top reasons for participation. Managing stress and learning healthy lifestyle practices were also high on the list of motivators, cited by 50.9% and 34.9% respectively. The primary barriers to participation reported by employees, which again is the blue bar, was time constraints. Employers, however, reported that their perception of primary barriers was a lack of interest. Impact and importance. So 70% of employees think it's important for their employer to offer and support health and wellness programs, and they want to see that support primarily in work-life balance, stress management, and emotional health and health management. Employees reported that health and wellness programs had positive impacts on their work performance, their physical health, and their mental health. 81% of employers consider employee health very important, and over 65% of employer respondents view their company as very responsible or extremely responsible for employee health and wellness. Regarding goals set by their organizations for employee health and wellness, employers ranked lowering healthcare costs, increased productivity, and positively impacting employee overall health as the top 3 goals. When asked to assess the achievement of these goals, a significant 63% considered their achievements as successful or extremely successful. Communication and accessibility. How often are employers getting feedback? Most employers gather health and wellness program feedback through surveys, and they do it on typically a quarterly basis. This is followed by team meetings, suggestion boxes, one-on-ones, and employee resource groups. Communication preferences. So the preferred method for both groups is email announcements. As you can see, with 74% of employees saying they prefer email announcements and 56% of employers thinking that that's what's preferred. Employees seem to prefer mobile app notifications, while employers seem to think team meetings are more preferred and effective than employees do. For program delivery preferences, both groups believe that in-person delivery is more preferred and accepted. So nearly 80% of employers, those are the orange bars, believe that their employees are either very or somewhat comfortable having health and wellness discussions with their supervisors, compared to just about half of the employees who feel that way. The slight variation, however, in seeking health and wellness educational content provided by the employers suggests that the employers generally have a pulse on their employees' interest in health management education, though there may be still room for improvement and better tuning into the employees' needs to close those gaps. Among employees, the blue line on the graph, the majority report having health and wellness discussions with their supervisor occasionally or rarely, with fewer reporting them as regular or very regular. On the other hand, the employers, the orange line, perceive these discussions as more frequent, with a significant portion reporting them as occurring regularly. Among employees, the majority report receiving updates occasionally, with fewer receiving updates regularly or very regularly. In contrast to this, the employers believe that they provide updates regularly or very regularly to their employees. So there's a huge disconnect in communication here between what employers think they're doing and what's happening versus what the employees say they're actually doing and participating in. Employers, again, the orange line, tend to overestimate high satisfaction levels, anticipating that nearly half of employees would be very satisfied with the program, while only a quarter of employees report such high satisfaction levels. In fact, employees are more neutral or just somewhat satisfied, more than employers actually think that they are. Okay, there is a notable difference in the perception of reliance on one's organization for managing health and wellness. Our data suggests that employers may overestimate the level of dependency employees place on workplace health and wellness resources, with over 40% of employers perceiving that their employees heavily rely on organizations' health and wellness, while only 20% of employees report doing so. Our data also suggests that employers generally have a more favorable view of how well their health and wellness programs align with employee health priorities. Employees, while agreeing that programs address their health priorities to some degree, are less enthusiastic. They're more likely to see the impact as moderate and express greater skepticism about the program's ability to meet their most important health priorities. So there is a strong alignment here as employees rated healthy food options and on-site gym fitness as lowest in their rankings. The chart here shows the top 3 most valued programs by employees, and what's not shown is their lowest rankings. However, on the employer side, which is orange, they show that the least ROI was health screening, healthy food options, and on-site gym fitness. So that kind of aligns where the employer's least ROI kind of coincides with the employee's least valued in terms of healthy food options and on-site gym fitness. Employers reported that stress management programs as a higher ROI, and employees reported it as being a valued program. So again, much alignment here. Discrepancies, though, were seen in preventative healthcare, with 40% of employees reporting it as a high value, while 32% of employers reported it as low ROI. Areas for improvement. So employees want better incentives for participation, convenience and accessibility, and a variety of program options. This kind of aligns a bit with employers' improvement, although the top one, their tracking income outcomes, is different. However, they both want to see accessibility and more program variety options. As far as new initiatives for both groups, this is an interesting data point because our last slide showed that least ROI and least value was fitness and healthy foods. However, the data showed that these were some new initiatives that both groups wanted to see. So it suggests that perhaps current initiatives in these spaces are not working, and both groups are looking forward to better initiatives in healthy food and fitness challenges. Now, while employees are interested in more flexible work option initiatives, employers are focused on stress management, which kind of align with each other. So I suppose it's how they package it, in what way you package stress management. It could be flexible work options. Overall, employers generally have a more positive perception of their employees' health in all 4 categories compared to the assessment of the employees we surveyed. The data indicates that employers may overestimate the well-being of their employees, which could impact how they tailor and offer wellness programs. The disconnect, particularly in the financial and mental health aspects, suggests that employers may need to reassess and align their strategies to better support their employees' actual health concerns and needs. That concludes the research presentation of the webinar. We will now jump into the discussion and Q&A with Jim, myself, and Aaron. Thank you.
Hey, Sera-Leigh, that was fantastic. There's just so much there. And I think some really powerful information that our audience will be able to leverage, but the disconnect. We've known that there's this disconnect between what employees think, what employers think or believe, and now you've been able to quantify that. So Aaron, let me turn to you. There's a lot there, but let's start at the high level. Was there anything there that surprised you or you didn't expect to see?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So, I mean, again, good work, Sarah. And, looking through the numbers and studying your report, a lot of the numbers resonated with me. Obviously, every company has a different experience, and I'll touch on some of that as we go through the conversation. So sometimes I look at the numbers and say, well, that's not exactly what I'm finding. But a lot of it overall, the trends and the themes and the gaps are certainly resonating with me. And it's a challenge to get people's attention and to keep them having that sustained engagement.
Yeah. Now you are in a unique position. You have global responsibility. So do you see different things in different regions around the world, or are these pretty consistent from your experience?
The human condition is fairly consistent around the world. I mean, we're all human beings. We're all driven by the same sorts of wants and needs. And so I've been in global roles for a very long time. My scope covers 90 countries at the moment. And so we do see culture, race and religion and different traditions play a part in, the timing of doing certain things and being culturally sensitive. But apart from sort of the cultural nature, people are people. They need to do their health screenings. They need to eat healthy. They need to do their exercise. So a lot of those things resonate globally. Getting one's finances in order, all these different things that play into the human experience and what leads to and what are the drivers of well-being, they're very consistent around the world. As much as some people will try to tell you that, oh, we're different in this way or that way, it tends to be pretty consistent, but you've got to watch those cultural nuances and make sure that you don't sound like an ignorant, foreigner, if you like.
Right. Okay, let me jump into some of the thoughts that we've had coming into this. And we found, as you know, in the report, we found a significant gap between the availability of workplace health and wellness programs and employee participation rates. And from your experience, what do you see as the primary reasons that gap exists? What causes it, and what are the barriers that we can address?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the things I'll say are a little obvious, but I'll say them anyway. And then hopefully there's some things here that are a little unique. So, I mean, people are busy, right? That's the first thing I will say. So again, what Sera-Leigh showed really resonated with me in terms of the lack of time as opposed to the lack of interest. And there are some topics that people won't be interested in, but what I've noted is that people are busy. We're pushing them to achieve goals and to bring the numbers home. Talk to a financial accountant in the last 2 weeks of each quarter and then try to say, hey, let's do some well-being activities. They're like, I've got work to do, right? So it's that prioritization. A lot of people are a little hazy on what the benefits are at times, and they may not have been ready to prioritize exploring the benefits the company offers. When I talk to my colleagues about these things and they get frustrated, oh, employees say they don't know, but we've been communicating. I say, just calm down. When they need it, they'll learn about it. So when they need to go to the doctor, they're going to very quickly check out what it is the healthcare covers. But trying to explain it and have everything covered in detail beforehand probably isn't going to resonate, and they just won't remember and retain everything. I would also say that specific to well-being, you've got to recognize that a lot of people may be saying, hey, I'm good. I do weightlifting twice a week. I go to the gym. I jog. I eat healthy. I'm not overweight. I'm good. I don't need these programs. And so we have to respect that and understand that there is a subset there. On the flip side of that, I think that there are some people who are in denial, frankly. And I think that's where we want to try to get to those people. And you got to be there when they're ready for it. So it's kind of, at the moment, maybe they're not participating, they're ignoring their health needs. But hopefully, when the time comes to start to engage, your programs will resonate. And finally, I mean, in terms of participation gap, the stress workload management, some of the things you showed, Sarah, people are really keen on having a culture, more so than programs, a culture of well-being. We talk a lot about a culture of well-being, embedding healthy ways of working, letting people take time off to disconnect, to relax, to refresh. and so on. And we're really pushing this notion at the Coca-Cola Company to say, hey guys, it's important to make sure you don't stress yourself out and burn yourself out, because we want sustained long-term performance. So you've got to look after yourself. But in the short term, it may be that people are just too busy. They may be deleting messages about benefits. They may be opting out. They may be blocking emails from vendors. And all of these things are barriers, right, in terms of, getting to people with the message.
Absolutely.
In terms of, how to sort of, go ahead, Sarah.
No, go first, continue.
I was just going to carry on a little bit in terms of, so we know what some of these barriers are, but then, how can we address some of these? So really, as I've sort of started to allude to a little bit, I said being where people need you when they're ready a couple of times, or something along those lines. And so our approach to that has been, for at least the last 3-4 years that I can remember, we've had a very well structured calendar of themes. And so what we do is we outline, we have the months of the year mapped out on a sheet, and we have a theme for each month. And we try to link in with different themes, like, World Mental Health Day as an example. And so, okay, so in October, when World Mental Health Day is happening on October the 10th, let's have the theme be mental health, and let's just promote the mental health solution in that month. Let's not always promote everything all the time. Let's just promote one thing at a time through multiple channels. And that's what we've been finding, that if we can sort of just pickle things in, month by month, and I can talk more about that as we have the conversation, but that's really critical to getting through to people. Allocating time at town halls is another thing that you can do, and making it easy. And you touched on this in terms of ease of use, Sarah. So, that's like everything, right? Everyone wants things to be, instant gratification and easy to click on the app and make it work. Otherwise, they give up. And all these, you got to make sure it's easy. Single sign-on, critical. If it's not single sign-on these days, people are too busy to worry about it. So making it easy. At the Coca-Cola Company, one of the ways that I've been able to really get through to people and break down some of these barriers is connecting initiatives to our brands. That's really powerful. So if I take an example of Powerade, so, we have a Powerade advertisement that goes on television and through social media around pause is power. And so we can leverage that with our employees as well to say, hey, you can pause this, and you can get some power from pausing as well. So it's kind of like playing off our own brands, refresh yourself, have a drink, just take 5 minutes, or these kinds of things. So what I'll finally say on this question is, you can see I'm incredibly passionate. There's just so many different things we can talk about here, but at the end of the day, they always say that, you can work on and you can improve what you can measure. So as much as trying to measure return on investment is not really the game here for me when it comes to well-being, it's more about value, and it's more about, what's the net promoter score of our program. So we make sure we're keeping an eye on those, getting feedback from employees. Because if you try to push something that people don't like, then you're sort of going the wrong way, aren't you? And so what we're doing is we measure enrollment, we measure engagement, and we measure net promoter score for all of our different programs in our global suite. And we report them out by all of our operating units around the world. We slice it by 9 operating units, and we make sure that we get those into the hands of all of our regional partners, and then they can look at those. And it inspires a little healthy competition to look at how they can promote the programs more in their regions.
There are 2 things you talked about that I want to reiterate there, and it's the idea of overwhelming your population with your resources. And I like that you guys pick a month and focus, because sometimes you have 15 solutions and they just don't know where to start. And so that kind of focus is really helpful, I think, into at least communicating with them on a simpler basis. And then the other thing, I'm a researcher, so whatever you can measure, I love it. I think that's fantastic that you guys are actually tracking those things, because then you have numbers, you have reports, you can go back to your data, and the data doesn't lie, right? So I think that's a great initiative. We're going to be asking you for some of that data, I'm sure, but it's really great. the initiatives you guys are taking for that. So my next question for you, Aaron, the research highlighted that we need to customize our wellness programs to meet diverse needs of employees. And like you had mentioned earlier and Jim asked about, was the global reach of Coke. What impact, how does Coca-Cola approach the customization of the wellness initiative? And what impact have you seen from tailoring your programs on engagement and well-being?
So I'll talk about a few different things here. One is, again, a little bit along the lines of what I was saying with our brand. So each year we run a global challenge, which is a major global challenge to get, real engagement across the organization involved, in terms of taking steps, basic movement, getting out there, taking walks, traditional steps challenge type stuff, right? And we run, 3 or 4 global ones a year, plus we have regional ones. But the major one that we run each year is a real sort of a showcase one where we theme it around a certain theme each year, and we give quite not big dollars, but some awards around those for completing those challenges. And so over the past couple of years, we said, okay, how do we really get a bit more engagement? We were getting 10, 15% engagement of the population over many years of running these. We've been doing this for more than 10 years. And so last year we themed our global challenge on the Special Olympics. And so we're in a fortunate position again, we are the sponsor of the Special Olympics and we partner with them. And so we're able to get their collateral and include all of the topics and the themes around what the Special Olympics is all about, how it helps people. And leading into and just before the Germany Special Olympics Games last year, we did a donation-themed challenge. And we almost doubled participation from the prior year. The participation was 23% across the 18,000 plus employees that we have in scope at the Coca-Cola Company. And this year, we themed our global challenge on the Olympic torch relay heading into the Paris 2024, which is imminently about to begin. And I'm all excited about that too. And we increased even, I said to the guys, like, we got some good participation last year. That was pretty good. Hopefully we can get something similar. And we got over 5,000 employees, 28% participation in a global challenge. So this is at a global level where it's very much a one-size-fits-all, if you like, approach where you say, here's the registration link and here it is, and the experience and how it all works is the same for everybody around the world. But it's a great way for people to get engaged. Now, that's not really customizing and tailoring, but it's kind of like we customize the branding and the theming to match with our company, if you like, and including how Coca-Cola works with the Olympics, et cetera, to generate that excitement. Other ways that we do this is, again, at a global level, like I just said, it's hard to tailor a program, right? So we've got global programs. I can't really tailor them for every single country. But rather than worrying about sort of customizing and tailoring too much, it's really, our approach has been to provide a wide variety of options across and within our wellbeing programs. So, the platform that we use allows you to track different healthy habits. And so I might be interested in, making sure I get good sleep, that I start the morning right with the right meals, etc., getting a weightlifting session that day. So they might be my 3. And then, Sarah, you might have 3 different ones and Jim might have 3 different ones. So you are customizing it and tailoring it for yourself. And so that's one example of how we've approached the sort of the notion of being able to tailor and customize and setting a well-being goal, like writing it down. We offer incentives, which I can get on a little bit more in terms of incentives later, but offering an incentive for just setting a goal, because there is research to say, and as a researcher, that if you make a goal and you write it down, you're much more likely to follow through on it. So we try to use those sort of approaches to get to that, individual level of tailoring. And I would say one more thing on this is we provide company paid coaching sessions through our mental health provider. So you can do counseling and you can do coaching. The coaches will help you with anything. So it could be that you want to go on a weight loss journey, or it could be that you're worried about you're having an issue with sleep. And you just want to talk to this coach about what you can do about that. And so you can get to an individual level of support through these different programs. Another thing I would say is that our teams and regions around the world, they come up with all sorts of ideas. One team wanted to activate around Fanta, our brand Fanta, in a region of the world in Europe or something. They said, okay, these 3 countries are doing an activation where we're going to be launching Fanta in this marketplace, and at the same time we do that, we want to launch an employee challenge to get people engaged. And so we can customize that. So again, it's just, there's a myriad of different ways that you can customize. So there's individual level, there's, like I said, there's different options and things, but then there's also at a country level, you can, run something bespoke for that, just that country or a group of countries.
Yeah, Aaron, I think it's brilliant, the strategy that you've employed about aligning to brand, your own brand within the organization, because I think that it really has a double impact, right? You're reinforcing what your organization does in the marketplace, but you're also aligning it back to the individual. So a very nice connection there that it sounds like you've developed. Could you say a little bit more about incentives? Sera-Leigh had a point in her slides about employees want incentives, right? I don't think the employers were too keen on incentives, but what's the strategy that you've seen and how effective is that?
Yeah, so these are a really interesting debate, right? And I think that the employee and the employer perspectives could diverge depending on who you ask. Excuse me. So the long and the short of it is that we do offer incentives. I touched on that in terms of the challenge. Coming back to the challenges quickly and then talking about our main kind of game, if you like, is that when we do our global challenges, we make a big deal out of saying, okay, if you get involved in this particular global challenge over the next 4 weeks, there is a incentive at the end of that. So it's a nice way. Obviously, we'd like people just to join for the fun of it, but we know that the incentives work. When we pull back on incentives, I've seen feedback from people saying we noticed. So we can get that, and we're very careful about setting the level of incentive. So we're not talking about hundreds of dollars and getting silly about things, but we're talking in the level of a $50 level of award for getting involved in a challenge over a few weeks, and it might be what that person needs just to push them over the edge to go and take the time to click the buttons. As much as we try to make it easy, it may involve downloading a new app, refreshing the app, updating the app, finding your password, resetting, those sorts of things can be a barrier to getting involved. But if I said, hey, I'll give you $50, you're like, all right, let me figure this out. So I think it's that trade-off to say, I'll give you $50 if you just take 15 minutes to set the thing up. But then ultimately, I like to believe that if there was no barrier and no sort of friction, that they would have just wanted to do it because it was fun. At least that's what I like to tell myself. So I want to be clear that we don't provide incentives in the form of dollars. Okay, so I think that's really important. Obviously, I just used an example where I said $50. I think when you think, oh, Aaron gave me 200 points and then I was able to buy X, and X is worth about $50. So you kind of get a sense for the value in that way. But what we do is by taking those actions, I talked about setting 3 healthy habits as just an example of one of the aspects of the program. Each day, if I track those healthy habits, I might get 10 points for tracking each day. If I take some measurements, my waist circumference, and put the numbers in, I might get some more points. If I go off and do a journey in financial well-being app, I might get some more points. So we have all these different points embedded that you can get through financial, through doing mindfulness sessions, through all these different programs that all connect back into a main program, and they accumulate. So it's kind of this, I guess it's that instant gratification piece of being able to see each day the points accumulating. Now, there's no real money involved at this point. It's just seeing the dial move and seeing that, well, if you like, it's like a bar that goes across the screen. You can say, okay, I've got more points each day. I'm getting closer and closer. And then we set up 5 cliffs. So when you hit those, we'll call them stages, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And each time they escalate. So we've made it 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. So the further you push, the more you get each time. And then that's worth real money. Again, it's not in the form of dollars. What we do is we grant points that can be spent on our recognition platform. Now, this is where I think it's real magic. And the way that the points come through to you is, let's say I was recognized for having a service anniversary last year or for doing a good job on a project. Those points would be sitting in the recognition platform. And then through the well-being platform, I've just hit a new level and I've got some points from that as well. And now I go into the recognition platform and I see the accumulation of those points. And then it starts to be worth real money and I can go and buy something. I can get an experience, take a trip, buy a new watch or something. And so that's kind of how we've done the whole incentive game. But the incentives, they're really important to people. If you don't make sure the incentives are coming through, people will call you. So.
Aaron, you talked a little bit earlier about, these monthly kind of focuses and trying to communicate that way. And you have the app and the incentives and all of that to give to your population. But one of our findings was that there's a really big communication gap between employers and employees regarding wellness programs as a whole. Have you guys at Coca-Cola implemented communication strategies to improve or kind of bridge that gap? And how are you kind of ensuring that your employees are well informed and engaged with the resources?
Excuse me. Yeah, so I mean, I started to touch on the value of and importance of incentives just now, but you've got to imagine you've got 18,000 employees working for the Coca-Cola Company, and among them, the incentives are really important to some of them, and they'll work towards all of their well-being goals and objectives, and the incentives may be a driving factor. For some, it may not be a driving factor, and for some people, it may just be they don't really care, they can't be bothered anyway. And so I think that when we think about incentives, we need to be careful that that's going to be the end game. We need to make sure that, whether you're giving an incentive or not, you've got to hit people with something that they're interested in actually doing. So an incentive will only get you so far, is what I'm trying to say. And I'll start by saying that when we thought about this gap ourselves, going back many years, that's kind of where the notion of the calendar came from. And again, I keep talking about incentives, but doing promotions to promote certain programs in certain months. So I talked about the themes each month. Okay, so this month's theme is financial well-being. All right, then. So then what are we going to promote? Well, we're going to promote the financial well-being app. Okay, how are we going to promote that? Well, we do a Viva Engage, it used to be called Yammer, post internally in our all company channel. That goes out every first Wednesday of each month. So at the Coca-Cola Company, in the all company Viva Engage channel, you can find our Wellbeing Wednesday posts the first Wednesday of each month. So using my example, in month X, it might be around, hey, have you got your finances in order? Are you on track for retirement? Have you got a will and trust? We use different themes. So it's like, even within financial well-being, I like to pick 1 or 2 things to try to trigger someone to go, oh yeah, I haven't done that. I need to think about that. And then, okay, so you've just got this short blurb to read, and then it's like, oh, there's a link, click on that, and then there's an article in this app. And then, by the way, you just got double points because you did it during the month when we were promoting financial well-being. And so again, whether the incentives are or are not the driver, it may help to go push people over the edge to go, oh yeah, if I do it this month, I'm going to get double points. So let me go in and actually read about setting up a will. what's it going to hurt? And then maybe that helps with their financial well-being. The other way to get to people through communication channels is, emails are key. You show that in your research. Both employees and employers like email, no matter what anybody will tell you. Emails, you can't get away from emails, right? We all love emails. So the emails are there, but then people do block emails sometimes, or they're very quick to delete emails and not read them. And so we look at the statistics on that. We have a pretty good open rate on ours, but it's not in Australia like 50%. So you say 50% is good, but it's only 50%. So, you've got, like I said, Viva Engage posts, email. We have posters, especially in our plant locations. We leverage our digital signs. We have postcards in cafeterias. We had a really cool thing recently. We did this thing a few months ago with coloring murals. I was like, I haven't done coloring for years. I'm like, let me try this. So I'm doing the coloring. Okay. It's very relaxing doing coloring. And so we had these coloring murals out there in kitchen areas and sort of open areas and break rooms in different offices. I talked about emails. They're key. Emails from the company, emails from vendors, but not too many emails. If you've got too many emails, people just get overwhelmed and they want us to start deleting them. So I'm really selective about how many emails we allow through. And so it's very targeted. So we hit them with something, we want them to read it at that time. Home mailers, I'm a bit sort of on the fence about. I think they can hit people sometimes, but it may be a bit of a waste in a lot of cases. And then intranet website. I will finish by telling you that one of the things that I'm really proud of that we've worked on over the past couple of years is to take our intranet hub for wellbeing. We call it our KO Wellbeing Hub. And every month we refresh it. So the nuts and bolts and the shape of it is pretty much consistent, as you can imagine. But we have these cool tiles on there with different pictures, and we change them up every single month to match with the theme of the calendar for that month, with different links to different things. And so that's kind of how we try to keep it fresh. And like I said earlier, meet people where they are. People aren't going to go in every single month. I'm not kidding myself. People aren't going to engage in all the programs every time. But if there's something that piques the interest of one person, each month, then you get that incremental engagement over time.
Aaron, that's fantastic. I really a nice blend of strategic and pragmatic approach to, reaching people, and then recognizing that a 50% open rate is good, but it's still 50%, right? There is work to be done. And let me turn to some of the questions that have come in from our audience today, because I want to make sure we hit those. The first one, I think you've addressed, but let's just make sure. Do you formally collect data on your employees' perception of benefits? You do NPS, you mentioned, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think NPS is really a key one. I would say that at a country level, we have engaged in focus group sessions and surveying, as and when over time. But more recently, over the last few years, we have made sure that every vendor at a global level, let's talk global. So at a global level, every quarter, I have the enrollment, the engagement, and I have the NPS. One of the things I was looking at a couple of weeks ago was 200 written comments of feedback on one of our global wellbeing programs. So I think that's an example of, saying yes, it's not like always routine. The NPS is routine, the enrollment stats are routine. But then for these different programs, it's kind of like, okay, let's focus on this program today. And so we may go out and do a campaign and collect comments and feedback. So that's sort of how we write. So over time, over the course of a year, I would say I would get feedback, written comments on each program at least once.
Okay. Next question, how broad is your program offering? Meaning how many different third-party vendor solutions are available to your employees through your health and wellness program?
So at the global level, our wellbeing suite of programs is actually relatively small. We have a main wellbeing platform, and we have some bolt-on applications that we try to integrate as much as we can within them, but you could consider them to be extra. So you could say, well, we have a financial wellbeing app, a mindfulness app, we have a mental wellbeing support program, we have an exercise app, and we have our main platform or game. Okay. And so there's kind of 5 main programs at the global level. And then there are, a whole bunch of benefits through our benefits portfolio for the United States, for Canada, for the other 90 countries. And so don't ask me to add them all up, but we're talking a lot because it really is country specific. So we have global plus local in all these aspects. If I'm based in Mexico City, I have access to those 5 global programs. And I also have an on-site gym in the Mexico City office, as an example. And I'll have some other local benefits, because I'm based in Mexico.
Here's a question that I think is coming from a US focus. How is the taxable income of these rewards handled?
Oh, I like these sort of technical questions. So if the value of a benefit is nominal, right, it's generally okay to offer things. Okay, now I'm not a tax expert, right? But, basically if you're offering somebody an exercise app that's, a few dollars an employee across and you pay at a global level and you have a contract of that nature, I don't think that's something you don't have to be concerned about. When you're talking about actual points that go into the rewards that I was talking about before, those we do convert into a value and we do report taxes on people's individual statements. So when you really get like a benefit, then we make sure it's taxable. But for access to these kinds of apps, it's generally okay.
Good. That's the right answer. If there is any IRS agents out there listening, right?
Yeah. So just in case anybody, exactly. Don't fact me, check me on that.
Here's a question. Do you communicate with non-employee family members? So your wellness programs, sounds like you're targeting an employee, but do you reach the family as well?
Yeah. So look, most of the programs, I'll be honest, are targeted for the employees. We have this debate a lot. And it gets very complicated. Think of eligibility files, and it's kind of like already it gets very hard. So what we've said is, when it comes to mental health, we've really doubled down. We've always had mental health offerings, and they've always been available to everyone in the household, not just necessarily the family members, but anybody living in your household. If there's a mental health need, the company provided program is there to support. So that's an example of where it's available, and we've doubled down on that, through recent levels of communication and told everybody, hey, remember that this is not just for you, this is also for your family members. But there are some things you can do to invite friends and family to get involved in some of the exercise apps and things, but mostly it's for the employees.
Okay. Another question, do you have examples of health screenings that you do regularly, and are those successful?
Yeah, I've looked with interest at the areas where the employees said they didn't find the benefits very valuable from your research, Sarah. And I think it's interesting, right? Health screenings, on-site gyms, healthy food options. I think the thing with health screenings is that, I used to work in Japan, and we would push everyone to do it every single year. And so as an example, let's use Japan. Okay, so we've got 500 employees in Japan, and really we try to say, hey, every single year you need to go. But a doctor will also tell you, you don't really need to go every single year if you're healthy, right? So it's that dichotomy, I think, of saying, well, the benefits person's saying go, and then there might be an incentive to go. In that case, there isn't. It's just, you should do it. And then you get the report, and it's the same as it was last year most of the time, right? So I think I get it. I think that's the I'm not sure this is answering the specific question, but I think I understand that you don't need to do it every year. But what I will say is, we had a colleague in Japan who didn't know anything was wrong. We said, no, go and get your checkup. Found a cancer in the throat, and found it just early enough to be totally cured. So I sometimes say, look, if we can just save one person, it's enough.
Right. Yeah, valuable. All right, last question, Aaron. How do you decide when a program is not working, and how do you respond? Do you sunset the program, or do you promote it?
It is tough to take things away. And so we do need to watch out for, things just hanging around if they're not being of value. So I would say promoting, trying to understand what the issues are is the first thing to do. Pretty obvious, I think. You know, things are not working, let's find out why. And then at some point say, all right, rather than sunsetting it, it's probably more of, let's see if we can replace it with something different, shape it up, reposition it. And that's a good way of tackling it. If you take things away, it may just feel like you've taken it away.
Right. Well, I know we've used almost all of our time. I do want to wrap it up and make sure we give people time to get ready for their next call. It's been a great conversation today. Sarah, thank you for the great work that you've done to update everybody really on this important topic and the different perspectives that the employer and the employee have in this. Aaron, thank you for sharing your perspectives. I think it's invaluable, your global experience and your global responsibility, but also what you've done here in the US for your workforce. It sounds like some really innovative things. And again, practical measurements and practical application of these programs. I want to thank everybody who joined today and the questions that came in through the Q&A. A reminder, we will be distributing a recording of the session as well as Sarah's slides. So thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.